She's one of those.
I am here with Larry Studnicky from High Plains Drifters. Larry, of course, the prolific songwriter and vocalist for the band, a genre-bending indie band. That's what we'll call you this time. That has success with a few different musical styles. Songs of Love and Loss is the new 6-song EP, and it's available everywhere. Larry, always great to talk with you, man.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for shining some light on our little EP. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. Songs of Love and Loss. Really cool stuff. And I say prolific and I'm serious. You know, this is you always got something for us, man. It's great.
Well, to be frank, some of these songs were written years ago, and I just carried them around in my head because I was too chicken to take a stab at recording them. So, the single we put out last winter, which is the second song on the EP, Since You've Been Gone, was written probably in the late 80s or early 90s after an actual breakup between me and a girl. And it rattled around in my head for a long time before the band and I got a chance to bring it to life here. So prolific is an overstatement. So some of this stuff, some of those songs were written in the moment and like within the last year, and others or fragments of them were in my head for a year or 5 or sometimes 10 or more.
Yeah, well, getting them down and getting them recorded and getting all that production stuff done, that takes some discipline for sure. And you do that. It's great.
Well, we've been really lucky. We'll have it took us forever to finish our debut album, but this second album is I started it in June a year ago with Greg Cohen, just Greg and I picking out a few songs, and the band joined us in August, and we've been in and out of the studio ever since, and we're close to wrapping it up in just about a year, which, given the complications of COVID and studios being closed and all the crap we had to deal with, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, it's just a really great sounding record.
I have a great producer, and I have the good sense to work with musicians who are shitloads more talented than I
am. And that is great to surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, talented people, professionals. That's all a major component for sure. Now you say you wrote Since You've Been Gone in the 80s, late 80s, early 80s, or a long time ago.
I wrote it within a couple of years after breaking up with the girl that it's about. Yeah. So it would be a late 80s, early 90s composition in my head. That doesn't mean I finished all the lyrics back then. I often carry around a verse and a chorus memorized just so that I have it. And then when the time comes to record it, I find myself writing the rest of the song often.
Okay. Now, I mean, my question with it is, the first record is pretty different in style. You guys do a whole bunch of different things, but the first record's a little more,
the first record is a little way more diverse. The first single off that record, Virginia, which I love still. I was listening to it yesterday, in fact. But it's a country leaning rock song that caused the early reviewers who came across us to brand us as Americana, which we are on a handful of songs on that album, but we don't think of ourselves that way. And in fact, it was on that first album, right near the end, we did He Reminds Me of You, which you hear now on the EP, but we recorded it at the end of album 1. And I said to Greg Cohen, who had stepped into the producer's chair at the end of that album, I said, this has got to be more, I'm using the word loosely, more pop. It has to be, because I just hear it that way. It's not like Virginia. It's not a punk pop tune like First Amendment Blues. Right. And so we went back. Greg was in a band in the 80s. Most of us musically came of age in the 80s. And we went back to our 80s roots and inspiration on that. And when we heard it, we said, we can't put it on the EP. We can't put it on the debut album at all. It's too different. But when we started this album, we decided to stick with the 80s as our sort of overarching inspiration. Not every song fits clearly in that lane, but in the main, you're going to hear a lot of 80s influences in almost everything on album 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I've noticed. Yeah, that first one has that Americana kind of thing. It's more Eagles than New Order.
Correct, but that's where you nailed. That's what we're trying to mesh now. The Eagles meet New Order is what I said to Greg after I heard the early demo of Since You've Been Gone. That I was like, it tells a story the way the Eagles used to, but it's an 80s-ish song. It's, we've got the synths on it, and
right.
I couldn't be happier than how that song turned out. And we took the same inspiration into the one that got away, which is the leadoff song on the EP.
Yeah, and I love that. But when you wrote the song, you got the rhythms in your head in the early 80s or whatever for Since You've Been Gone and held it that long. Is this how did you picture it with hear it with the synths and stuff like that?
No, I didn't. To be honest, I didn't originally. I heard it a little more guitar based. And actually when you hear when the album comes out, we decided to do a second version of Since You've Been Gone. It was Greg's idea that we should do a ballad version. And just because of our influences and the way the guys decided to attack it as a ballad, it's like an Eagles song, and it's like a really good Eagles song. And I'm going to be really curious to see how people react to it after they've heard the more 80s influenced poppier version of the song, because I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous ballad.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And when that was the first song I heard from you guys that really opened that door to that synth pop 80s sound heavily. You hear it a little bit on the first record, but that song in particular really blows it over the top. And the first song on the record, the one that got away, is similar to that.
Deliberately.
Yeah.
I mean, it lent itself to that style of production. And we also had, even though we're an unsigned band, we don't have an A&R guy at a label telling us what to do, but we do have, marketing and PR people who advise us, and they were very clear in their advice that, people, you've got an audience out there, they love Since You've Been Gone. They're going to expect a next single that's more in that lane than what you did on your first album. It was like, yeah, okay, no problem. And it's like, we're already in that lane, and we know what we know what that next single is going to be. And we're, in fact, I'll be back in the studio with Greg and Mike DeCampo, one of our guitarists, on Monday, working on 2 of the last 3 songs on album 2, and they're in that lane as well. So
that's cool. Yeah, and
where it works, we love it. It doesn't work on every song. I mean, Ruby Run Away With Me, which is I think the 3rd tune on the EP. I think there's some 80s influences in some of the guitar work that Mike DeCampo and John Makem do, but to me, that song could have gone full country or short of that Americana. And when we first started working on it, we were trying to figure out how to pull it back from that direction so that it would sonically fit with the rest of what we were doing. And the answer came from just throwing out the acoustic guitars, because we started with some acoustic guitars, threw them out, went to electric, and we found the song's direction the minute Mike DeCampo picked up a Fender, I think it was a Telecaster, and started playing what you hear at the beginning of that tune.
Right. Yeah. And that was, it is the 3rd song. So after those first 2, and really, speaking New Order, Bizarre Love Triangle comes to mind for the one that got away. I was like, wow, that is just, and I love that song.
You hear their influences in some of the bass parts that Dave Richards played. And I love we all love New Order. I spent many a late night and early morning dancing in various New York City clubs and after hours clubs to New Order and those types of sounds.
Yeah, definitely. And you turned me on to Marshall Crenshaw. I'd always heard.
Did you listen?
Oh, yeah. It's right here, man.
Yeah. His first record that's one of the great debut records of the 80s, man.
It is. It's a masterpiece.
It is
so good. You know, everybody knows some
someday, some way.
You know, and that's, you know, Cynical Girl, and but the stuff in between, the other stuff,
it's a great record.
It's just,
and in fact, we took inspiration from it a couple of times on our debut album. I'm not really the guy who conceives of like the backup vocals. I tend to turn to John Maycomb for that, who has a whole separate career of his own as a great singer-songwriter, unsigned like us. We're all unsigned. You know, we muddle through. But you know, I on Virginia, as we were working on Virginia, I said to John at one point, I said, go pull out your first Marshall Crenshaw record and give it a listen, and come back with some backup vocals that make Marshall Crenshaw proud. And you hear that influence on Virginia. Yeah.
Oh, it's something. It's a really great record. Really great record for sure. But Ruby Run Away With Me, much more like the first record. You know, I'm thinking like Johnny Cash meets Elvis Costello kind of thing.
That's a good way to describe it. I sang it in more of my natural bass baritone, whereas on Since You've Been Gone, The One That Got Away, and the two songs that we're working on this Monday, which are called Until We Dance and Funny About Love, Greg's pushing me up into the tenor range. But yeah, I mean, there was no way I could do Ruby other than, I don't think I could have done it other than in that voice. I love the fact that I can, to think that I can come close to making people think of Johnny Cash when I sing, it sends shivers down my spine. I'm a huge fan of all his stuff. And the song, we didn't, it could have been twangy. In fact, I think someday maybe, you know, we'd love to play a twangy version of it live.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have fit if we had gone in that direction. So.
And I have that was one of my questions. You know, do you ever worry about something like that not fitting? And I guess you do a little bit.
Well, we worry about it. We worry about it more now, but still not so much. We've come to adopt and love the label. I'll someday I'll go back and dig out the reviewer that first called us genre bending. We like it. We take it as a compliment now. But we made a deliberate decision on this record to try where we could to pay homage to the music of the 80s that we loved, and where we couldn't, you just say fuck it and you throw it out. So you will hear on the second album when it comes out, you will hear a straight ahead bossa nova tune, which I would never have predicted, because it's a song. The song is called How Did I Write This Song? That's the actual title. How did I write this song? Yep. A guy is sitting alone singing it, and as he finishes the first verse, he looks up and he sees that the girl that he thought he was singing it to is gone. Anyway, when you hear the lyrics, it's clear. I sang it for Greg last October, and I didn't really, on some songs I have instrumentation in my head. I hear the instruments playing and I can convey it to the band. And on some songs, like How Did I Write This Song? I have no instrumentation in my head. So I sang it for Greg, and I said, what do you think? And he said, well, first, I love it. And second, you're going to call me insane, but I hear it as a bossa nova tune. And I sat back and I said, I would never in a million years have thought of it that way. I said, what the heck? You know, we have an amazing band. Let's see what they can do. It turned out that Kyle Castle, who's our drummer and engineer, Kyle had played that kind of music before, which is great, because we had the anchor of our rhythm section who knew what to do. Mike DeCampo showed up at Greg's to do an early demo of it, and he said, I spent the last 3 days doing nothing but listening to bossa nova records, because I've never played this stuff at all. But he's a professional guitar instructor. So he started, John Maycomb and Greg had done some early work to figure out the chord progressions. And then DeCampo came in after locked in his basement for 3 days with bossa nova records. And he started to play, and Greg and I just sat back and went, holy shit. It's like, this is a real, and for me, it's the most different outlying song on the record, but it's probably the coolest song on the record. I don't know if anyone at radio will ever play it, and I don't care. It's a great bossa nova tune, and I'm thrilled that we're going to put it out.
And that's cool. And I really, I connect you guys with that. That genre bending thing is really, really accurate. And the fact that you embrace it is what I really love. You're not afraid.
Well, we're not trying to go crazy. We're not going to go crazy. We're not going to go crazy.
But it's great to hear. I mean, I'm a huge fan of all kinds of music. I love everything.
You're old. You're older. Like, I mean, I'm with guys that can play anything. They proved that when they did the bossa nova tune. And so we all have all these influences and artists that we've followed and admired and loved all our lives. It's hard sometimes to just, to take the customary tried and true industry advice of, make the next song sound like the last song that people fell in love with, and you can only do so much of that. I mean, I'm going next Wednesday. I'll be at Citi Field in Queens to see, and I think of these guys a lot when we record. I think of Green Day. Well, I'll be seeing Green Day, Fall Out Boy, and Weezer all in one concert. Can't wait.
Wow.
And Green Day's first 2 or 3 records, everything sounds the same, right? But then as their career went along, either the songwriting skills improved, or just they learned more about, they became more skilled with their instruments, but they became a lot more diverse. So did the Beatles, right? So did a lot of groups. So, I mean, we're already old. We didn't start doing this as 20-year-old kids who could only play 3 chords. So it's hard sometimes to not want to spread your wings and do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah. And it's like a voice of experience, I mean, you get all these life experiences, you get all this different knowledge as you go along. And, it's hard to go backwards sometimes, but it's great to hear all of those different things come out. I want to talk a little bit about Nuclear Winter, because I really love that sound. And it reminded me, and there's so many 80s things that pop into my head. Now, I'm a kid from the 80s. Wall of Voodoo, Mexican radio.
Mexican radio, yeah, maybe a little.
And that, I just love that song and I love that sound. It's just the inspiration for things like that is an 80s thing for all of you. When you bring that to the band, they're on board with all of that, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I mean, look, I think all of us musically came of age in the 80s. The core of the band, we're all, everyone's over 50 for the most part. What's really been one of the cool things we've had to do, like with you, every now and then I get a chance to introduce Christina Benedetto, who's one of our backup singers, but she's the lead on He Reminds Me of You.
Okay.
I remember when I first introduced her to that Marshall Crenshaw album, which she was just too young to have ever heard. Maybe she'd heard the 1 or 2 big radio singles, and she was like, "Oh my God, where has this guy been?" Yep. So, I mean, we all start as fans of music first. And so when, with a song like Nuclear Winter, that one really took life more just between me and Greg than with the rest of the band involved. I had a very specific idea in my head for how the rhythm track, what I felt on the rhythm track. It's not like I heard every single thing. And I knew that Greg and I were completely in sync when I sang it for him with nothing, a cappella. And the first words out of his mouth were, "This song's all about the rhythm track, isn't it?" Because just from the way I sang it, I said, "Yes, it is." And he goes, and I tried to tell him what I was hearing, and he goes, wait. He goes, "I had to shelve something that I was working on for a major label. Let me pull it up." And he had basically the rhythm track that you hear on it now. I had in my head, I always had, I think they cut through pretty well in places, the steel drums that you hear in the background of the song. I had always heard those, and I sang those notes to Greg, and he pulled up a sample of a steel drum. And so, between the two of us, we got the basic lyrics, rhythm track, the steel drums. He laid down some pads on keyboards, and then we brought in the band and said, this is a song about the apocalypse, and it's not exactly like Since You've Been Gone or The One That Got Away. It can't quite go that way. Right. But it's darker, and everybody was like, "Cool, let's do it."
Yeah. Yeah, and I absolutely love it. It's great. It adds a lot of movement to this EP. It's just like you say, it's darker, and the other stuff's a little more atmospheric, a little lighter. This gives it a lot of shape. I really dig it. And speaking
Well,
of that,
it came from a dark place. I mean,
yeah.
this is one where I'd carried the germ of the idea around for a while. And the first verse and chorus I had, but then Greg was like, let's do it. And this was last summer. We're still in COVID, still in lockdown. Manhattan's still a ghost town. And so I just, I was like, all right, that's, Manhattan, we'd just been through the summer of burning and looting and marauding and everything else.
Yeah.
And so I wrote those last two verses from the point of view of someone who, like all the other guys and girls in the band, we're New Yorkers who love our city, and we've watched it basically, on the skids for the last few years under the current mayor's administration. Streets are dirtier, crime is up. I mean, it's turning back to the shithole I first encountered when I got there out of college. It's almost like 30 years of progress have been reversed in an instant. And this song is, I consider it a love song to New York, but it's a love song from someone who's really pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's cool too. I love that. I love that statement. That's fantastic to get that out there. But you revisit Jennifer Aniston on here. Which really was, I mean, that was a big success for you guys. Great video.
I don't know. I don't know that it's been a big success. We're all really partial to the song. The lyrics are funny. We love her. I mean, she's super talented, super beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
She's got everything going for her. But I wrote that song at a point in time where she just couldn't get that Justin guy to pop the question and marry her. And it's like, what is going on? How can the world be so wrong that some guy won't, doesn't see his way to the altar with her? Fortunately, this time around, I mean, John Makem sang the version on our debut album, and Greg said, you need to sing it. You need to sing it. You can sing that high. And again, he pushed me to sing higher than I usually do. And she's divorced now. So we were able to go back to my original lyrics. If you compare the lyrics on the debut album to now, debut album starts out, Jennifer Aniston, why are you married? And now I was able to sing what I always wanted to sing, which is Jennifer Aniston, why are you single? Why are you still single? It just makes no sense. So we thought sonically it fits with the production that Chris Vanderheyden did for us over in Belgium. I thought we'd give it another whirl.
It's really cool, and it sounds lighter and happier.
It is lighter. It does. It's exactly. That's exactly. You're right. It sounds lighter and happier than the last time around. Yeah,
and which is pretty cool because it's a stalkerish kind of thing, especially when
it is a song. It's a song about obsession. That's what it's about.
Yeah. And when it's partnered with the video, which I absolutely love, it's very stalkerish. You know what I mean? This lighter take on it is really pretty cool. It's a different twist for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Kudos to Chris Vanderheyden in Belgium. He's a friend of Greg's, and this was his idea to do it this way, and we were like, cool, man. It's like, it's not unlike a lot of songs we used to listen to back in the day either. So we were happy to see it go in that direction.
Yeah. Awesome, man. He reminds me of you. That female vocal, drastically different, tons of shape to the EP. I'd say drastically different, but it still fits with these songs. It really does.
I always thought so. I had some arguments with some of our advisors about that. And I said, look, I go, it's just like the 80s. This is like the B-52s. You put the chicks out front every now and then, right? You let the girls from Athens take the lead, and sometimes Fred Schneider's out front. I said, so this is our version of a B-52 song. We're going to put Christina out front. Sabrina Ann Curry, one of our other backup singers, is backing her up, and John and I are together singing the male vocal parts on that.
Okay, yeah, and that's a great balance. I mean, I love
and
that.
It is
the duet.
When we look as we look at how things are doing on Spotify in the 4 or 5 weeks since we released it, that song, He Reminds Me of You, is doing as well as any other song, and is, I think, highly likely, at least if I get my way. I don't always, but if I get my way, I have a very specific idea for a music video that I think fits stylistically with the lyrics, which are about a girl missing a guy with whom she used to have a sadomasochistic relationship. There's a video I would love to do. And in fact, I'm probably tomorrow, I'm going to sketch out my treatment for that and send it to the team and see what they think. So maybe you'll see that later in the fall. I'm dying to get the video made.
I was going to say that premise for that video is pretty darn good, man.
Should lend itself to some good visuals.
No doubt. I can see it already. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And, there's always that quirkiness with you guys. There's a tongue-in-cheekiness to a lot of what you do. And
yeah, more so on the debut album than here. I mean, I made a conscious decision on some of a lot of these songs are songs about lost love. The one that got away, Since You've Been Gone. And I didn't want to tarnish the emotions of loss or desolation or whatever it was with anything tongue in cheek. So you'll hear a couple of lines on some of the songs that are yet to come, which are a little more, have a little more of a sense of humor to them, like some of the songs on our first album. But love songs should be love songs, and songs about loss should be songs about loss. And it's probably, you don't joke about that stuff. You can joke about other stuff.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of what you're doing. You have that tongue-in-cheekiness to a lot of what your catalog, but then you have the stuff on the EP, which isn't so much like that. As a whole, that's it's a great vibe. It's just because it can be if it's too dark and serious, it a lot of times
I agree.
Fun,
Yeah, you sit back sometimes, and I always, there are a handful of songs that I think about all the time when I think about myself as a lyricist. And the probably number one on my list, and I don't think I could ever write anything this good, but there's so many lines in it that just make you smile, is Warren Zevon's Werewolves of London. And for me, that's like the model of unique, non-cliched, smack you in the face with its originality songwriting. And so when it's not like you can't borrow from it, you can't steal, you can't copy it, but you try to say to yourself, there's the gold standard, right? I got to be original. I don't want to recycle cliches. I want it to be interesting. Every now and then I want people to sit back and chuckle and smile, but without being stupid about it. Like I used to really hate listening to McCartney's song, Silly Love Songs. When it first came out,
really,
I couldn't stand it. I thought it was trite and beneath him. But as time has gone by, I listen to it now and I go, no, he was right. It's a love song. It has to be a love song, right? You can't be apologetic about it. You have to go straight ahead, 100%. Find some original way to tell the girl I love you, and he did it in that song. And I think now I kind of understand where he was coming from. He was a little bit older then, and I think I get it. So now I can listen to the song and smile instead of.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those songs that's really honest, and it's hey, this is it's just what it is. It's a silly.
It's what it is. This is how I feel.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
When I listen to High Plains Drifters, I think Joe Jackson, I think Warren Zevon,
It's funny. Yeah, well,
those things. Marshall Crenshaw.
I'm going to tell you right now. We're thinking specifically of Joe Jackson in connection with the song. We're working on these two songs now. We think specifically about Joe Jackson as an inspiration for a song called "Funny About Love," and we're hoping to bring a little of his keyboards feel into that. We haven't touched it yet with keyboard. There are very few instruments on it, but yeah, he's absolutely on our minds right now.
Yeah, see, that's cool. And yeah, I hear that throughout the catalog. Really, there's hints of that. There's, if I have to put you in a box, those guys are in that box too.
Yeah, it's a good. That's a great box to be in.
No doubt, no doubt. When are we going to see the album? Do you know? When you get to
well, again, we're pretty damn close. Again, it's August. People go on vacation. My family's going on vacation. Other people are going on vacation. So there are 3 songs left to do. 2 of those are
that's close
in the early demo stage, and the third one hasn't even been selected yet. We have a couple of songs that we considered and tossed to the side because they just won't fit stylistically. They're more ballads, and we're trying to avoid. There are 2 ballads out of 12. We're not going to throw any more ballads on this album.
Okay.
With luck, we should have these 2 songs, and then the one that we don't even know what it's going to be. Yeah, it'll take us between now and September, October to wrap those up and mix them. So either it's going to be, and then you're coming into the holidays and all the major label releases. So does the album come out in Q4? I don't know. It might be a Q1 of 2022. We'll see.
Yeah. Oh, that's good time though. Yeah, that's great to hear. It's really cool. And this is a great layover. This 6-song EP, Songs of Love and Loss, is it's really great, man. It's a great preview of things to come for sure.
I appreciate you saying that. I feel like I just got so lucky working with these guys. Everybody they're all brilliant musicians, and they bring unbelievable contributions to this bare bones thing that I start with, and then Greg begins to give a little life to it, and then they come in and they take it like to some place that you never would have conceived it could end up. I always say, to people, well, sometimes people say, well, why do you do this? It's like, you're never going to really break through all the major label clutter and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's not all about that. I mean, the creative process itself is on a level, it's its own reward. It's like once the record's done, it's almost like you're like, fuck it. Like either it's going to find an audience or it's not. But the fun was making the record. Yeah. That was the fun part. Yep. So that's what keeps us going. We're having fun as a band. Everybody's bringing great ideas to every song, and it's just no egos. Nobody's I'm not dictating. I mean, Greg's the producer; he's in charge. But nobody's been out of shape because something they tried didn't work or got thrown out. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. And that's it's spoken like a true artist too. The creation is what it is for an artist. I when I do photographs, I love having the camera in my hand. I love pushing the button.
It's that moment. It's that moment.
Yeah, it's magic. It's really magic.
Absolutely.
And absolutely. When you're bringing in those professionals to shape your ideas like that and give them voice, give them a vision, and making that come to life, it's got to be just incredible. Really cool.
It's after being a husband and a father, it's as much fun as I have in life. It's like if I had been lucky enough to be retired by this stage in my life, I'd do nothing but hang out with my wife and daughter and spend whatever free time I could in the studio. But my daughter's still young and she has to go to college, and so I have to keep working. And it's like,
I hear you. Believe me, I hear that loud and clear. Live dates. Have you thought about playing any dates?
Yeah, we're thinking about it more and more, because as we wrap up this album, you sit back and you go, we could actually play a live set now without too many covers, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So the problem is always people's schedules. I have a serious day job that would prevent me from hopping in a van with the boys and just going on the road.
Right.
So, we'd be limited to, weekdays. We'd have to be, gigging in and around Manhattan and its environs. We're talking about it. We've had a couple of nibbles from some radio stations who wanted us to do some live streaming gigs, and you may see that before we actually hit the road. But it's always a question of what it's like, supply and demand, right? If the demand is there, we'll find a way. I was chatting with one of your brethren in the DJing world up in Poughkeepsie, New York, and he said he's been playing the shit out of the EP, and people are calling in and asking, who are these guys and where can we go see them? Oh. And, if we thought we could fill a decent sized venue, even a tiny decent sized venue in Poughkeepsie, we'd probably head up there.
Yeah. That's my friend Patrick. He's a special guy. Patrick Calamari, real great dude.
Great guy, and he's been super supportive of this EP. So
and that's just great to hear. People getting it out, getting the word out, and I will do my best to do that. And turn you on to a bunch of people like you turned me on to this masterpiece record here. That's what it's about. That's what sharing that. And
I'm going to ask you, I had this discussion the other day with somebody, but first, separate. Are you a Style Council fan?
I know of the Style Council, sort of like
it's totally different. I mean, it's Paul Weller's second band after the Jam.
Yep.
And it's like, talk about genre bending. I have no clue what you would call the music the Style Council does, but to me, it sounds as fresh today as it did in the 80s. It's one of those, it's like Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson stands out because he sounded different.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Ramones had a lot of wannabes and clones. You had the Romantic, you had a ton, whether Joan Jett. I mean, there was a whole, I love all that music, but there were a lot of followers. And then you have guys like Joe Jackson, who was just out there doing something that didn't sound like anybody else. Bowie never sounded like anybody else. Yep. And the Style Council to this day doesn't sound like. I'm going to send you some links to some of my favorite Style Council tunes, probably on YouTube. Okay. You got to spend some time with those guys, man.
Cool. Definitely. I'll give you one too. How about Jellyfish? Do you know Jellyfish?
I know the name, and I may have. Okay. That's one where, like, maybe if there's one or two hit singles, I probably know it, but I don't know their catalog.
Early 90s, but have a really quirky. We were talking about lyrical, really quirky.
I'm gonna check out Jelly. I'm gonna check them out on YouTube after I knock off work today.
Yeah, and
I'll send you some Style Council videos. I mean, it's funny when I listen to the Style Council, I always think about this is like a flip side, so different musically and yet not. Listen to Marshall Tucker, brilliant musicians playing a ton of instruments that you don't expect to hear on so-called Southern rock records.
Right.
They were just so inventive. I don't know how many of them, but there were like 8 or 9 or 10 of those guys. Right?
Yeah.
Huge band playing tons of different instruments and just killing it. And they didn't sound like anybody else.
Yep.
And it's like when I hear the Style Council, I'm like, man, that's like some weird alternative English universe version of Marshall Tucker.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'm excited, man. I love this. I love sharing music with you, man. And
you're lucky that you get to do this, man. I still work more than a 9-to-5 job just to have some freedom to do this. You get to do it for a living. I envy you. I've been telling my daughter is the budding author. She's 14 and working on her first novel this summer. Yeah. And I keep telling her, I go, you're too young to really grasp that you might be one of those rare people in the world who has a chance to make money, to be paid doing what they consider to be fun. You know, she thinks writing is fun. She has 3 novels mapped out in her head. She's writing. You're one of those guys who lucked out, and you're like getting paid to just have fun, man. I envy you. I really do.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a great thing, and it all happened when I stayed home with my kids. I said
that's been for most people in the world. That's been the big upside. As much as people bitch about whether their kids were masked or not masked or in school or Zooming or whatever, the fact that we all got to spend more time with our kids is, I think, something that we'll look back on and go, that was one of the best things that could have happened to the world.
Yep.
To force a lot of us type A driven fuckers to spend more time at home with our families. I needed that. That.
Yeah, and that's great to hear. And always thankful to have you, on the show and talk about your music and just chat about life, man.
I hope we'll chat again about either the video for the sadomasochistic video for "He Reminds Me of You."
We got it.
Well, actually, the next video coming out is it's in the can. I think it's been color corrected, and we just need to find some place to premiere it. But the next video is going to be the one that got away.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And so that if I were a betting man, we'd probably let the August doldrums pass. Maybe you see it in September. I doubt you'll see it before. But we have a great video coming out for that. And then I'm going to send my thoughts on "He Reminds Me of You" to my guys today and see if they share my vision.
Cool.
Such as it is.
Cool. So. I hope so. Very cool.
It's a little on the twisted side, but I think the song calls for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Larry, let's do it again. We'll talk soon.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you for the time, man.
Yeah,
Take it easy.
Doors are always open to you, man.
Well, one of these days, one or more of us from the High Plains Drifters just might walk through it in person. You never know.
Yeah. Awesome. That'd be pretty awesome.
All right.
Take care.
Have a good day.
All right. Bye-bye. You too. Bye-bye.